Hey everyone, what's up? This is Simon back with the second part of our Spotify integration tutorial. So in the first part, we've developed our OAuth server, we've deployed it to Heroku, and we've made sure that we can log in with our Ionic app to our Spotify app. So if you haven't gone through the first tutorial, make sure to check it out. Perhaps it is linked somewhere here or at least below this video. So make sure that you got everything in place so we can now start with the second part. So let's do this. I've created the blank app already in the first part, but if you're just starting out with the app again, make sure to create a blank new app. Then go ahead and add the Cordova Spotify OAuth plugin and also your custom URL scheme. We've talked about this in the first tutorial. It's for the callback of Spotify and the OAuth mechanism. So make sure you got everything in place for this. For the second part now, we also add another plugin, which is Cordova Media. We will need this to play the preview of MP3 file from Spotify. So we can't play the whole music track. It's a limitation of the API. They're currently actually working on a new SDK that will enable you to play the whole song, but this is not yet working with Ionic as far as I've seen. So we will stick to some other basics for now. Also, of course, like always, make sure to install the media plugin from Ionic Native and then go to your app module once it is finished and add the media plugin. And we will also import the Ionic storage module from add Ionic storage. So we can keep track if a user was previously logged in to make the login flow a bit easier. So Ionic storage module for root, just like always, and then media goes to the area of our providers. Perfect. Now we can focus on our home TS and the home HTML. So we already got the Cordova, we got this little auth with Spotify dialog, and we can already log in and hopefully get some result back. And at this point, we now need a new package, and this one is called npm install Spotify Web API JS. And with this plugin, we can contact, I think, almost all of the available endpoints quite easily within our app. And the only thing we need to do is we need to import. You can do it on two different ways. So let's make it like this. In my written tutorial, it's a bit different, but that's no problem. So now you can say Spotify API equals new Spotify Web API. And if you now use our Spotify API, you even get some code completion and you can see already all of the features of our installed package. Now what we want to do is after the login, we want to grab the playlists of the current user. In my case, of course, those will be my playlists. Otherwise, it will be yours or whoever logs in. And sometimes we also want to show a little loading, but we only want to show this in case our background refresh takes place. So the refresh token gets sent to the server and we get a new access token back. And for this, we will use our private storage. Make sure to select the right one. And we also should wait for the platform to be ready. So this platform ready. Then we can work with our plugins. And here we will then check if we have set the logged in to the storage, and if that's the case, so if we get a positive result back, we will automatically call our auth with Spotify and true, because we're not making the full OAuth dialog with going through all the boxes and pop-ups that are coming up, but we only make this background check to get a new token. So if show loading is true, we should present a little loading. So private loading controller. And also we should keep track of this. So we add loading as well. Make sure you get the imports right for this. And then if show loading, this dot loading equals this loading controller create, and this dot loading present. So now we're showing the loading spinner whenever we make this background login. And of course, if loading is set, we should also dismiss it once we are done with our function in here. And perhaps also if we encounter any errors, we should do the same. All right, so after the login, we want to get the user playlists. So let's call this in here, get user playlists. And perhaps we also want to display the logged in states. So let's also keep a variable logged in. Let's make this false in the beginning. And now after the login, to use our Spotify web API, we need to set the access key for this. So we use our Spotify API and call set access token. And the access token is exactly what we get back after the authorize dialog. So then we can say logged in is true. We can get our playlists, and we can also say this dot storage set, and now we are setting exactly this key to true. So when the user restarts the app and comes back, we will see that he was previously logged in, so we're quite sure that we got some type of token, especially the encrypted refresh token, which will then be sent to the server in exchange for a new access token. All right, so that's all we need in here. Now to get the user playlists, we can use our Spotify web API, and of course we should create a loading as well. So perhaps let's say content loading playlists, and that's fine. And then Spotify API. As you can see, the code completion here is awesome. So simply call get user playlist, and we don't have to add a user ID. So you could retrieve the playlist for other users, but right now, if you don't call it with anything, you will simply get the playlist of the logged in user, which is me or whoever. So if this loading, again, loading, this is so boring to type it all the time. I'm actually not sure. I had a finally block, but that's not really working in my case. Perhaps you have a different solution or simply chaining another, then I'm not exactly sure what is the best way. So if you know about the best way to hide the loading, please let me know. All right, we should have a new playlist empty array. And once we get back the data from our playlist call, we can set our playlists to data.items. So data will contain a bit more information, and we just want the items, which is an object or array of, I think, 20 playlists if you don't specify anything else. All right, besides getting the user playlist, we perhaps want to open a specific playlist. And to open a specific playlist, we want to push a new page. So Ionic G page playlist. And then we can simply call our nav controller push with the playlist page, and we will pass through our playlist, which is the item the user has clicked. And if you want to make sure users are also able to log out, you can call the Cordova plugin again, but for some reasons it was not working 100% like specified. So the function is called forget, but it should be a promise but actually this is no promise for me, so I just had to call it like this. This will clear the tokens from your storage, so you can then manually set everything back to beginning, empty array, and also set your storage locked in key to false. Okay, so that should remove all the important data there. Okay, so after loading the playlists, we got them in our array, and now we can change a bit in here. Let's call this Spotify client, and then we add an ion list with button ion item and ng4 let item of playlists. I hope I called it playlists, yes. So, and on click we call open playlist. This will bring us to the details of one playlist where we can then select single item or whatever. So let me bring in some text in here. So each playlist has an image, or actually it can have multiple images, but we will just take the first image for simplicity in here and the URL. Just log out the playlist once and dive into the JSON structure, and then you will find all these values, also like item name and tracks total. There's quite a lot of information in each of those playlists, so use your information wisely. And also at the top we will use some buttons. So we will call auth with Spotify if we're not logged in, display this button, otherwise we show the logout button. So we got an easy switch in there. And finally, a little notification or information if the user is not yet logged in to indicate that he or she should log in. Okay, that's everything for the homepage. So we make the login, we store our token, we set some variables for later use, optional in here, and then we retrieve the playlist using the Spotify API package. And then we drink a nice cup of coffee. Oh, perfect. Now let's head over to the playlist. Within the playlist, we get the item of the playlist. So first of all, let's clean up this view a bit. Clean this one up as well. And then inside our playlist, we can grab the playlist which was passed by the nav params. So get the playlist, and then we can call load playlist data with a playlist. Oops. So this dot load playlist data with the playlist. Perfect. And also in here we need our Spotify API, but it's not working like in here for one reason I can show you later on. For now we will just make it a Spotify API of the type any, and then set our Spotify API again to new Spotify web API. So now this is of the type any. If you use it and you don't get the code completion, but we're using one function later, and the signature for this function is slightly wrong, I would say, because we can pass in different parameters I saw from the developer page for the Spotify API endpoints, and it was not exactly in here. So we could only specify one parameter, and then we get a TypeScript error and all of this. So just showing you two different ways to use the Spotify API, completely up to you how you're going to use it. Perhaps we want the loading controller in here as well. And of course the loading. So now we can place loading. So now we can show the loading again. Let's use this one. So whenever we grab our playlist data, we show loading tracks, and then we call the Spotify API get playlist. So really handy to use. And get playlist needs two IDs, so the ID of the owner and the actual playlist. And all of this information is already in here. So the owner.id and then playlist.id. Because playlists could be of other owners. You can subscribe to different playlists on Spotify, so you can never be sure that you're the owner of the playlist. Therefore, simply take playlist owner ID. And then we get the data back, and we can set our playlist info in the beginning perhaps to null, and then we get the playlist info like data. But this information is a lot of information, and to iterate it a bit easier, I would also create simply a tracks array and set our tracks to data.tracks.items. So it's a bit deeper down, and we can already unwrap it at this point, so we can easily iterate over the tracks within our view. Perhaps we could dive into the view first now. So first of all, the title. If we got the playlist info already, we can use this to display the playlist name at the top like you're used to within the Spotify app. And then we have a long list of items, and in my previous tutorial I used cards, so I will use cards again. Select item of tracks is now the iteration over all the tracks of this playlist. And it will be a bit more complex card, so let me bring in a few things. So first, Ion item, the top row of the card, again showing a little image somewhere deep down in track album images URL. Had to look through the JSON to find this. And then of course the name and the artist name of the track, something you always need. And now to save some typing, I'll also bring this in. So this is a long Ion row with a few columns. So the first column is to play the preview. And this will call a play function with a preview URL of our track. And this is only shown if there is actually preview, so not all of the tracks have a preview. And also if we're not currently playing something. So if we're currently playing something and got the URL, we will display instead a close. So you will only see one of those two buttons all the time. Then we get two more, and this one is quite interesting. So this will play the selected track on the active device. So if my active device is my computer, which it is most of the time, and perhaps I can also show this pretty soon. Let's see, can I do this? Yeah, I can open some music. So we will see how we can trigger from the device to play on our active computer or wherever we are active with Spotify. And finally, we can also open the items simply within our Spotify app that is installed on, in this case, my iPhone. Just like the custom URL scheme we had, I think they're using universal links, perhaps a topic for a new post as well. Anyway, as you can see, we got those few functions, so let's implement them. So we got play, which needs an item. We got stop, which is basically stop. Then we got play on active device, which also needs an item. And then we had open, which should open our native Spotify client. Perhaps we start with the easiest of them. Oops, not this. So if we want to open the Spotify client, we can simply use the item track.external urls.spotify, and we want to do this in the system browser, and we also want to display the location. I'm not sure if this is mandatory or optional, but this was definitely working. Normally this opens Safari on iOS and then it goes to the app, but because the universal scheme was registered, it will go directly to the app. So to play it on active device, we can use the Spotify API and simply call play. And this point was the problem because we can use it like this. So I've seen this inside the documentation for the API. This can be an array of track URIs that can be passed to the Spotify API. And the player or the API here for play, no, I can't go into this, or can I somewhere? Play, no, just play. All right, so this one simply expects an options of the type Spotify API device specific parameter object, and this object only contains a device ID. So right here we would have to specify a device ID of an active device, and we don't want this, we just want the URIs. So normally here should be something like this, an array, whatever. But it isn't, no problem, we can still use it like this. It works because this JSON object is passed through to the API, and then we will see the music will magically start on my computer. Now finally we want to be able to play the preview, and therefore we need our media. So let's import, nope, private media, and we might also need the media object. I'm not sure if we need it. Yeah, we should set our current track to a media object, and in the beginning this one is of course null. So when we try to play an item, we can set playing to true. Playing, of course, in the beginning is false, my bad, but now playing is actually true. And then we need to create a new media object. So this dot media dot create, and now we just need a source, and this one is our item, because for the play function, where is it? We already passed in the preview URL, so we get an URL and we can set it here to create this new item. And now we can subscribe to the two events on success, so the track was played successfully or error, whatever happened anyway, we should say playing back to false in that case. And finally we call current track.play to start the playback. This will now play in the background, so make sure you turn on the sound or deactivate the silent mode. There could be some issues with that. And for the stop, if this dot current track, so make sure we actually have a track, then we simply call stop on this track and set our playing back to false, and that's it. We've already added the view, so now we can run Ionic Cordova build iOS, sit back, wait, drink some coffee, and then watch how the app behaves on our device. Alright, so here's the app on the device. As you can see, we're not yet logged in. So let's go through the login flow real quick. Log into Spotify. I have to log in with Facebook. Because we're using the Safari view controller, I get this nice little benefit of using my credentials. I will continue. You can see all the permissions, and then let's head over to our app. So here we go. Those are some or all of my playlists, and I'll simply go into whatever training, workout, motivation, and here we see a list of all the stuff. So let's try to play a preview, and let's turn on my sound. Where is it? Okay, I'm pretty sure that the view of QuickTime and displaying this fucks up the display. Anyway, let's try to play something on my computer. Ooh, look at this. For some reason the play was... I'll go away and I'll select something else, whatever. And you see immediately on my computer the selected track, or perhaps it would be nicer if you would see what I'm clicking here on. So killing in the name of. So I'm now basically able to control the Spotify that is running on my computer with my iPhone. And I can also, of course, go into the track if I hit Spotify. If I hit Spotify. Okay, so there was actually no problem with the code, but we need to add the in-app browser as well to call this window.open. I was not aware that this would make a change, but now you know it. Add the in-app browser as well. And then to go back, as I said before, I can play it on my device. So I can play whatever I want. Once I am here. So currently the active device is my iPhone, but I want to play on this computer. So let's play something and now I can again select it from my app what I want to play. And now also going back to this view, the open in Spotify works for everything. Let's say we go here and it immediately brings me to the selected file. I can jump into whatever I have right into the Spotify app. Alright, so that's the Spotify integration with Ionic, two-part series. First one OR, second one actual Spotify API. To demonstrate the final feature, I can go back and as you can see, I can also play the preview from my phone if it's not mirrored to the computer. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more great Ionic videos, and also check out the ionicacademy.com if you want to learn Ionic with video courses, projects, and a great community. So I'll catch you inside the next video. Build an awesome Spotify client with Ionic and have a great day.